Mark Bradford was born in Los Angeles, California, where he continues to live and work. He has exhibited widely and has participated in solo shows, including You're Nobody, Til Somebody Kills You, a large-scale survey of Bradford's work presented at the Wexner Center for the Arts in Columbus, Ohio, in 2010, that then traveled to the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, the Dallas Museum of Art, and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Other solo exhibitions include the Aspen Art Museum in Colorado, the Cincinnati Museum of Art in Ohio, and the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York. Notable group presentations include the Gwangju Biennial, the 12th Istanbul Biennial, the Seoul Biennial, the Carnegie International, and the Whitney Biennial, among many others. Currently, Bradford is presenting a solo exhibition at the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis University in Massachusetts, while the Bell Tower, a large-scale multimedia installation created by the artist for the Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, is also set to debut this fall. More, in early 2015, Bradford will also unveil a new body of work at the Rockbund Art Museum in Shanghai, China, and present a solo exhibition at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. In 2013, Bradford was elected as a national academician, and he was awarded the prestigious MacArthur Fellowship in 2009. He has also started a foundation in South Central LA called Art and Practice, uniting contemporary art with social service. Tonight, he will speak to the many aspects of his multifaceted practice, so please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mark Bradford.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of background, not particularly of the work, but kind of a context. I really more and more thinking about the social work, the post-studio work, the work out in the environment, working with communities. A lot of what I learned, I would say, growing up in a very racialized space. What I mean by that, it was, my mom owned a hair salon, so it was black, and I lived in sort of Santa Monica, which was white. And in North America, we're race first. It's like, I'm black American, Chinese American, so it's race first. We don't have this sense of nationalness as much. So when I kind of grew up and when I had the experiences, it was kind of like what I call traditional black America. There was no alternative scene, there was no underground. It was kind of church-going black people. And the only alternative that I understood in my kind of community was transgression. Transgression being, say, of homosexuality or drug dealing or prostitution, but transgressions. And so you could go from being a prostitute to the pulpit. So it was always a relationship to that. So the good, the bad, the ugly, I think kind of came out of that condition. So this idea of a traditional community with the good and the bad, it coexisting, the hypocrisies, the sort of the complicatedness came out of that vocabulary. So I just kind of wanted to set the tone a little bit for kind of some of the work, and I really am beginning to think more and more about where a lot of it comes from. So I'm going to just start off with, this was my 4th grade teacher, Wilma Chappelle, and she was super glamorous, smoked cigarettes, wore too much makeup, and was the only person that put an art brush in my hand and said, oh, you should do something with it. I just liked her because she was extravagant. And I just put her in here because I always give a little homage to William. And I've known her whole life. She's 90 years old and I still know her. I'm going to go back a little bit. So this is both me and my mom. My mom was a hairdresser and I was a hairdresser and my grandmother was a hairdresser, and we had a little business in an all black neighborhood. And it was 3 generations. Actually, that's Booth. I'm doing her hair, and I think I would put my Foucault book and read her on her lap while I was pressing and curling her hair. So going back a little bit further, when I got out of grad school and I was actually thinking about how can I did not want to describe the body. I thought that the body was overdetermined and it was it was just too overdetermined and too figurative, and everyone felt like they knew what the black body was. It was the most written about, talked about, and it's too much. So I wanted to abstract it. But I also, my studio was in South Central, and I wanted to abstract that. So these two things, and I wanted to abstract them. So I started working with the materials of the environment. This was a beauty salon, what do you call this? A beauty, I forgot the word. Boy, I haven't been there in a long time. Where you buy the products from?
Supply store.
Supply store, beauty supply. And so I started making these paintings out of these end papers for doing perms. And that was my first kind of social materials and playing with abstraction. So all of these were permanent wave end papers, and they came out of that vocabulary. And also, pushing that forward, I knew that I came from the social space, and also it felt real binary at the time, and the art world was on one side, and my work in the hair salon was another. So at the first Miami Basel, we had these shipping containers, and they said, oh, would you like to do something in a shipping container? And I thought that was the perfect time to do this kind of site-specific thing. So what I did was, I just shipped my whole hair salon, and everybody that worked in it, to Miami Basel for the first time, to see if it would work. To see if I could try this kind of mercantile and mercantile space. And everybody who worked there, that's my mom in the green, actually. That's my mother. So I've always been trying to bridge things or make a connection to things. And this is very early on, trying to find an abstraction and trying to find something that's authentic. We do look alike, don't we? So then going back to this idea of mapping, and sort of, I really became interested in mapping the city or mapping this kind of urbanness. You guys have a neighborhood or a community here, that Jane and Finch? Is that what it is, Jane? So basically, my studio would be what you would think of as Jane and Finch. But I became interested in mapping where the signage comes from. So after the 92, oh, is that Lynn? Oh, okay. So after the 92 rebellion, they burned down a lot of things, and they put up this cyclone fencing. And then the cyclone fencing, people started using for advertising. So a lot of this kind of parasitic advertising came after the 92 rebellion. I became really interested in, the interesting thing about advertising in lower economic neighborhoods is the fact that the need is already there. It's like, we know you're already getting a divorce, and we know you want your hair, locks and twists, so we're going to make a business. It's not like in the middle class where they seduce you into wanting the newer car, the new Mac, or the shiny watch. It's almost like there's a crisis that's already there, and they sort of take advantage of it. Also, looking at where I get materials from, I really started going and scraping off the billboard advertising and using that palimpsest, that's kind of social palimpsest. But then what happens is they start to write too much about. What happens is you're constantly just 5 minutes ahead of the stereotype. And the critic, who doesn't know much, they'll write the stereotype. So first it was the black hairdresser in South Central who's using the permanent wave end papers, and I stopped using that vocabulary because of that. And then they started making too much about the paper, that it's coming from South Central and it's social, and so I said, okay, well, I'll just stop using that. So then I started just using store-bought paper. It really was about the paper, because paper has memory even if it's nothing on it. It goes from the high to the low. I mean, the most precious documents, sort of like the Bill of Rights and Bibles, Gutenberg Bible, is on paper, but then it also goes in the Xerox machine. So it's that high and low thing again. That's called Los Moscos, Scorched Earth. And my vocabulary was really abstraction. I was really mining abstraction. A lot of them started to look like topographical maps, starting from something that exists in the world as a map, how we control people through mapping and redlining, and people understand their place when they look at a map. And so I kind of would take it, sort of, the map would turn into an abstract painting. So always the body not being there, but as a ghost. Let's see. So I'm not going to, you get it, right? It's a painting. I mean, I can go blah, 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 but you get it, right? So, but the mark making, I became really interested in, and I was trying to get away from the hand. I was trying to get away from this idea that the hand is this precious thing. So I would use sanders and grinders, and because this idea of the hand being this thing that you're channeling, some inner thing, I don't really like that, because like, what am I channeling? It's sort of abstract expressionists, sort of the Pollock narrative was he's channeling the inner kind of darkness. Well, if I'm dark, what am I channeling? My inner Scandinavia, And so I never, this essentialism around like emotiveness, I was like, oh no. So I always am distancing myself from the actual motion of the hand. I trace the emotive gesture. I do draw. And then I trace it with a string or a twine or bathroom caulking. So I'm constantly distancing myself from that actual moment of the hand, the gesture, the important, yeah, I'm emotional. So this was Mississippi Goddamn, I think. Again, it was from a Nina Simone song about civil rights. Do I really think that this painting has any sort of social, talking about civil rights? I know. But for me, at that moment, kind of making a nod and a gesture back to civilization or the public sphere, I always like so people think that there's a little bit more going on than just my relationship to a hermetic process of abstraction. Which, well, I am hermetic, but I don't look in, I look out. That's where the material comes from. I take it from, I'm like an alchemist. I go out, and then I pull it in, and I push it back out again. You can see a little, I put this painting in because this was like a real struggle moment. I was getting away from the end papers. You can kind of see them on the front, and moving towards billboard paper. But again, it's that moment where as an artist you become known for a certain type of vocabulary, and then moving away from it, it's like, oh, there goes my career. Wait a minute, I'll put a few on top. Oh God, back to the hair salon, it's true. I mean, artists can talk all they want, but when you make a move away from what people have sort of coined you as, I wasn't the hairdresser guy anymore. And besides, I got very uncomfortable talking about black women's hair salons. I mean, that's their business. And guys always want to know, oh, what do they talk about in there? They talk about me? They talk about us? I'm like, no, they got you figured out a long time ago. So, and the social work, the work in the environment of the public sphere informs the work inside the studio. They're both kind of abstracting, but one has to do with more the physical, outside, urbanness, and one has to do with maybe I'm abstracting my own ness, my own kind of psychology. And abstraction gives me room to say I don't know and to play. I don't have all the answers. I'm kind of figuring out things. I'm interested in these things, and let's move on. So this is a project I was invited to be part of a biennial in San Diego called Insight. It all came back, 2014. And I wanted to do something that I never know what to do in these biennial situations. They take you down there, it's an unusual environment, they're like, oh, what do you think? What do you think? I don't know, it's like you walk around. But what happened with me was I went back and forth across the border so many times that I got pulled out. And they said, why do you go back and forth across the border so much? I said, oh, I don't know. I smart mouth. I never just say, why don't you just say you're an artist and you're here? I don't know. So they put me in this room like a holding tank and for like 12 hours. But there were a lot of people in the holding tank. So one of the guys that was in the holding tank was this little Mexican guy, and after we got out of the holding tank, he got this push cart, and I said, oh, what is that push cart? He said, oh, I just take people across the border in a shopping cart. And I said, oh, what is that called? And I said, oh, you know what? I'll give you $50 for every one you bring back. So in like 3 hours, I had every Molly terrorist that worked at the border. A very informal economy. And so my project was that we color-coded, we figured out where the Moliteros hang out, we color-coded the shopping carts, and basically we were kind of open for business. And we made them from the invisible to the invisible. They actually became part of the union. They designed their own outfits. They were there's a taxi stands that are yellow. They were associated, they got their own spaces. So that was in one of the moments where something that was very invisible and informal economy became part of the sort of, became part of the system, or, what's the word?
Mainstream?
Yeah, mainstream. They became, they got their money, And I like that, taking something informal and formalizing it, and it was a really interesting thing, but I'm always looking for these little details, and so that was a project that I did. I'm in the Sharjah biennial. I don't know why these biennial projects are going, but anyway. So I got really interested in the port. It's a port this is the poor port. They have a more expensive port on the other side of Sharjah, but this is where the boats come in from the Congo, from all these different places, and they're really, really interesting. So I got really interested in these kind of buoys that float, so I started making my own buoys of this kind of painting vocabulary, but using these kind of fenders that exist off of the sides of boats. And one thing I liked about it is that little piece of fender is in between something good happening and something bad happening. So I look at it as like an in-between zone, and when they back those boats in, that is the only thing between them and the dock. So I like this kind of in-between territory. Some of them start to collapse. I punctured them, and this is kind of what I plan on doing with them. I plan on kind of hanging them from the balconies, and they kind of will undulate sort of in the wind. This is a mock-up, can you tell? But this is what I'm proposing. I like to put in things that I'm working on and grappling with, because it's super boring just to sit up and show you everything that I've done. Well, here I am at the Tate, and here I am. There's no, for me as an artist, that's just boring. I mean, I'll sound perfect because I'll have it all written down, but it's not interesting for me. There's no engagement. So I prefer to put things in that I'm working on now, that I'm trying to figure out. And this is something I'm still trying to figure out. It's in March. And this also, at the same time, I'm having a show at the Rose Museum, and it's all about 16th and 17th century map making, and it's all about cartographers' maps, and it's all about sort of the early maps when they had those really interesting sea monsters on them, and like beware of and a lot of it was propaganda. They sort of would put the sea monsters on these early maps so that other sort of colonizers wouldn't go in those waters before they got there. So it was really interesting. So I really became interested in how cartography and kind of colonization and the waterways, it's not that much different now. Going to a country that's a little weaker and exploiting it, it's not that much different, now than what we did kind of then. So all these are based on 16th and 17th century maps and map making. I don't have to talk too much about the paintings, do I? I mean, how I made them. I mean, if you guys want to ask me how I made them. Everything's made entirely out of paper. Paper and rope and twine. The twine usually stands in for the hand. If you look on like that, and this comes from pulling the twine out. So it's a trace of the physical action of yanking the twine out. Again, that's that cord that you see hanging from here. It's always about covering up my hand and then kind of pulling it, trying to retrieve it. It's like drunk calling, you know? Oh my God, I wish I didn't do that. And you're trying to call back to make it better, you know? So it's like, I'm always trying to retrieve the hand in my work, but I know that I can't go back and retrieve it because it's gone. It's gone. But I'm trying to this retrieval process. So all this work, it's paper and twine. It's called. And I did a big wall of these merchant posters. They're called Sexy Cash. And again, it's the same thing as these merchants. So they already know they already know you're losing your house. And they're going to make that cash a little bit sexy, and you're going to take that cash and we're going to take your house. So, but I didn't see that much difference between that and 16th and 17th century cartographers' maps. I didn't see that much different. It's about mapping, and it's about exploitation. I didn't see that much different. So I gathered maybe 100 or 200 of these, and these are all like South Central. But South Central is mainly Latino. You know, sorry Snoop Dogg, you know. It has totally moved on. It's just, it just doesn't make money. The hip hop makes money by keeping it like circa 1980s. You know, Boys in the Hood. You guys remember that Boys in the Hood movie? It's about right there. Must be some black people right there. Don't people laugh right there? It hasn't changed that much in the kind of popular culture narrative, but the actuality, because the border is only 2 hours away, it's mainly Latino. But that narrative, the reality doesn't sell records and propaganda. But so I started kind of taking them all off and this is how I work. I have to work with mask because I sand so much. So at the Rose, it became this sort of mural that you could see from the outside. I think it was successful. I mean, I like maps. You know, I like maps because they're about power. I was talking earlier about Foucault. I read a lot of Foucault, and Foucault was the only person in Cal Arts that I got. The rest of them, I was like, dude, woo! Really? You guys talk like that every day? But Foucault I kind of got because it's power and systems and semantics. It made like kind of sense to me. Another thing that I'm working on is I'm having a show at the Hammer Museum, and there's the sort of the wall, the kind of project wall, and it has this great palimpsest. It has this great kind of memory on it. So this is a wall. I'm very much interested in the body at a very particular moment. It's very interesting to me. This is an AIDS map per 100,000 people since 2019. Estimated adult and adolescents diagnosed with AIDS per 100,000 people. What's interesting to me is in 1980, I was 18 and AIDS hit. But the conversation around it and the body was so interesting to me because I feel like we're experiencing it again with Ebola. The language is almost the same. The difference is that in the 80s it was the people, again, the people who transgressed. So it wasn't so much this kind of protection because it was almost like, well, you kind of deserved it. Whereas this time it's a little more, the world is getting behind. It's really interesting. When I came to Canada, the woman asked me, oh, have you been to Africa? And I said, no, not recently. And because, we don't want any Ebola in Canada. And I said, okay, alrighty. But this conversation again around the body and the vulnerability of the body, because everybody thinks about their body when things like that happen, because we don't know how we can get it. It's going back to this, we don't know if we can get it from the dance floor, we didn't know if we can get it from spit, saliva, everything. So the whole show is really about that moment again of the body being vulnerable. And so this is, if you can kind of see, so basically what I do is I scratch into the memory of the wall and get all the layers of paint. And this is kind of what it looks like in my studio. I do a lot of tests before I make the work. So this is actually in my studio because I like to see if it's going to work before I make the work. I calm myself down by doing tests. You know, I'm one of those people, I need to kind of do it 2 or 3 times and see what I'm talking about. That's all I've done. I haven't made the work. The work starts in June. But I mean, the work, like the show is in June. I haven't really started it, but I've kind of gotten the basis of what I'm interested in. And they call me, how's it going, Mark? I'm like, great, great. So that's kind of what I think it's going to look like on the wall. It has that palimpsest of memory, and I feel like on some levels this is a palimpsest of memory in regards to the body. It's not as gendered as 1980, and it doesn't have that religious tone to it. I mean, the churches and God's wrath and all that stuff. And it was like again, me growing up in a very traditional narrative. When it started in the 80s, homosexuals, people stay up too long and go out to clubs and have multiple partners and sex and drinking. And I thought, well, shit, you've just named everybody I know. You're like, whoa, you know, so this idea of being young, experimental, and the sin of the action. So that was kind of in the 80s. This one's a little bit different. It's just interesting to me, just interested in the way history repeats itself, but in a different way. Oh, yeah, this is good. This is really good. I can see the things here. So I'm also working on a large-scale piece called the Bell Tower at Los Angeles International Airport. And the only reason why I really wanted to do that was, as a kid, the Los Angeles airport was maybe 20 minutes away from my house, and I would take the bus, and I would spend days at the airport. Not days, I mean, I'd go in the morning and come in after. I loved going to the airport. I loved watching people come and go from all these different countries, and I'd say, oh, these are people from Switzerland. That's what people from Switzerland look like. And I must have been 13, 14. This kind of nomadicism was already starting. So when they asked for artists, I was really excited, and it became like almost like a performance piece, because you have to go through about 12 different bureaucratic boards, and you have to convince each one, and none of them want you there. So it's really interesting, because you have to convince them. And in the end, which is really amazing, they went for it. I didn't have like plan B, plan C. I was like, no, this is all I have, this is all I have. So Bell Tower I was kind of thinking of turning the whole airport into this idea of a plaza. And because the work sits over the new TSA, which is about surveillance and it's about kind of emergency, I called it the Bell Tower. And I was like, wow, you guys going to go for that too? That's amazing. So I'm just going to show you, these are all just process images. I also took the sculpture from an actual jumbotron, which is crowd control. I feel like the Colosseum is the gladiators and the modern day Colosseum. It's not that much different, and sitting in the middle of the arena, and how it keeps, we just want to see Rihanna just a little closer on that screen, you know. So, but at the airport, everything is so much about time, and the jumbotron is so much about spectacle. So these are just images, reference images. That was an earlier, I think I'm going to do it this way, I'm not sure. That was me in my studio making cardboard models of it. And look at me standing like, huh. Not sure. This is like a rendering, a 3D rendering that one of the assistants who's really good with 3D animation did. That is what it theoretically should look like. That's the interior. Now this is actually at the airport. I've been working at there. I just stopped just to come here, so that, it's kind of good. That is actually that's what it looks like. It's like this sort of vortex. It's this, and it's all made out of repurposed plywood from construction with the billboards still on it. It's really about an urban condition, because I was thinking to myself, I want everyone to be able to understand what the material is. Everybody has an urbanness. You can be from New Delhi to everybody understands the urban condition, and they understand detritus from that urban condition. And so everyone doesn't put this kind of urban detritus on plywood. In a lot of countries, they put it on that corrugated metal, because lumber is too expensive. But everyone will understand that condition. So that is what I'm working on. And that's about it. Did I go too fast? Yep. So I will talk, that's why I will talk a little bit about, I have a foundation, and it's in South Central, and actually the foundation really is in started in my mother's hair salon. It's called Art and Practice, and it is a multifaceted thing. It's an ILP, which is an independent living program for foster youth and job training and job placement. We have an 8-week program. We get about 40 kids in, about 20 finish, and about 70% are placed in jobs. We also have a contemporary art space where we show contemporary art, just contemporary art. The community that my studio is in is a very Afrocentric community, which means that they have an idea of what art is. It's Afrocentric, let's just say. It's very figurative, and it should look a certain way and perform a certain duty. And it's very Muslim, black Muslim. It's very black Muslim, so gender roles are very specific. It is interesting. I mean, it's very interesting. Me being an artist and being black and being in that community, it has definitely pushed the vocabulary a little bit. So we have a contemporary art space, we show contemporary work, and then we have a lecture hall where we do lectures just like this so that the community can come in and listen to lectures on contemporary art, books, writing, just contemporary ideas. And that makes up a campus that we call Art and Practice. There's no one building, it's a consortium of about 4 or 5 buildings. It's about a year old. And when I talked about earlier about quote unquote transgression, I think that the art world has great ideas. And really, really we engage. But we lack the people. You know, I feel like the mainstream in many ways have the people, but the ideas can be a little shallow. So I want to reanimate. I want to go there and reanimate. I mean, I want to talk about contemporary art and bell hooks and Kara Walker with that community, sort of to bring some of this into that community. I think it's problematic when we're constantly asking them to come to us. Please come to our museums. Come out of your homes and your communities, come here. They're going to be vulnerable, and we're going to feel maybe a little bit better because they're here, but that's not really a dialogue. So I think that Art and Practice inserts itself into a community. It's a contemporary art space and a social service space. And there's just a dialogue. So that's where that part comes from. And wanting to maybe, push back a little bit, on a little bit on the tradition, like, yeah, okay. Yeah. So you guys want to ask me questions? Yes.
So do you have work? What kind of work is produced from you? Okay. I'm just curious about the art and practice.
Still can't hear it.
Hello? Yeah?
There you go.
The art and practice that you just talked about, what kind of work, do you have you produce artwork with?
No. We have a contemporary art space, and we have, So you guys know, I don't know if you know the Hammer Museum. You guys familiar with the Hammer Museum? We have a 2-year partnership with the Hammer Museum. So the Hammer Museum actually programs the whole space. It's just contemporary artwork. It's exactly what you would see at the Hammer Museum. It just happens to be in this neighborhood. So so I do more partnering than actually building programs myself.
But did you say it was a community kind of involvement?
The community itself comes to the lectures. You guys can all drive in your cars and come down to the community, but the community also comes to the lectures of whatever we're having. Whatever it's Mark Bradford one night, it's Carol one night, it's someone from the social service one night. Sorry?
It's embedded into the community. So this
Oh yeah, it's
art space. I see.
Yeah, it's 4 different buildings. We have artists in residence, 3 of them. We have a sort of the foster care building, the contemporary gallery, and public lectures. It kind of loops around a half of a block. And it's a private operating foundation, and I don't think it's social practice for me. You take the money from here and then you do this. I'm not trying to barter this and that. It's not that type of a model, really. Right.
Are the kids coming from the neighborhood, or are they sort of across LA or finding the foster kids?
The kids come from the Department of Social Services. That means basically their wards of the state, and this is a program. These are not high-yielding kids. These are not that you read all the time. That I feel like sometimes they're almost starting to fetishize foster youth, from foster youth to Stanford. Well, there's a lot of kids that just do not go from foster youth to Stanford. Most, like 70%, the statistics are horrible. 50% unemployment. Prostitution is really big again. Pimps, we're dealing with pimps again. It's like, pimps? I thought we got rid of that in the 70s. Homelessness, incarceration, huge, 70% foster youth incarceration. So they come from the Department of Social Services. It's an 8-week program. We work with the Right Way Foundation. They've been doing this. Now I brought them into art and practice, and we kind of fund them. And it's mainly job placement and job training, computer literacy, mental health, how to keep the job once they get it. I work with them on an aesthetic level, like the do's and don'ts of clothing and what to say and what not to say. But they all come from the 90008 zip code, which is the zip code of art and practice.
So you referenced Kara Walker.
Yeah.
I'd like to know other artists that are, in your generation or a generation younger that either inspire you or you think that are doing interesting work at the moment.
Oh, God, I don't know. You sound like a collector. I don't know. I think Pedro Reyes is doing really interesting things. I think Kara's doing. I think Damian Ortega. I think there's a lot of. I really like Colin Washington. I like his paintings. I like Jack Whitten. I think he's amazing. I'm all over the board. And then I like people who are in social work. I'm all over the board. And I don't get out much. Yeah, I don't get out much. That's the news flash. A lot of artists don't really get out as much as you guys think we do. We don't, especially if you're busy,
And if I continue, how about past references? Because you reference, I guess, as someone that you've studied while you were doing your MFA or your.
Oh, when I was in school?
Yeah.
I worked with Charles Gaines, Millie Wilson, Alan Sekula. Very conceptual work, because I was in school in the 90s, and that was the main thing. Hal Foster and Baudrillard and. I read a lot. I read quite a lot. I like history or social anthropology, and some theory, but just certain authors I like. I find my inspiration in reading a lot, quite a lot, or in speaking with someone. I find, yeah. Did that answer that question? I kind of went off. I went, yeah.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, you can just scream.
Yeah, so I'll show you that. So yes, about the read. Should I do two? Reading, that's, you try to remove your hand from the making those works, but obviously you're using the materials that also have a certain reception in terms of the readability, at least at one time,
Yeah.
because they were billboards. So I'm wondering, where's the language in the work, and where does that work with your way of making the work, or your process?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that wasn't correct. I don't try to, I think I want you to see the labor, which is more of a class thing, especially around the, sort of the language around paint and sort of production and kind of access. I think labor is like something we don't, those who labor are because they didn't go to university, you know, this kind of idea. So for me, I will never be able to strip completely the information from the material that I use. And I do like that. I like that what happens is that the social narrative holds on, clings to the edges of the work. It will never squarely belong just to art, because the material itself belongs to the social. And I like that. It's not pure. I talked about that earlier, this idea of being a hybrid, something that's not pure, kind of a fly in the buttermilk, you know, church in the whorehouse, you know, things like that. I like things that are not one thing. And do I really want to erase the social out of the work? No. No, I don't. I want the memory of the social, and I want the conversation around abstraction, because if you think about abstraction, when I decided to be an abstract painter, I mean, it was a big guys thing, big white guys taking up a lot of space, and I thought, oh, that's going to be cool. I'm going to just trot on in there and say, I'm part of this conversation, you know, sit down, everybody just chill out, you know. But for me, it's because I wanted to kind of expand that narrative a little bit. The history of abstraction is not linear, and I think that people come to abstraction from other places, not just through this internal, hermetic, kind of Abex, MoMA, Jackson Pollock on the cover of Life magazine moment that we're still like, ugh. So I just thought, oh, wouldn't that be interesting to go and to be an abstract painter, to remove my body from it, and to really kind of just expand it a little bit. Just expand it a little bit. It's always, I think it's the same thing I'm doing with art and practice. Yeah, I'm black, I'm good, I'm here. I just want to expand it a little bit, you know? Just put my little on it. So it's not taking away from anything, it's simply opening up. But I'm sure those are political actions. I can be like, oh, I didn't know, but I'm very political. You know, I'm just like easy, oh, I didn't know, political. But I'm very political. Duh, right? Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, you did. So it's obviously I knew. And I thought when I was at Cal Arts, you know, they were like, oh, you're like gay, and oh, you're from South Central. You have so much stuff to work with. And I thought, oh, really? I'm going to be an abstract painter. How about that? Like feathers flop, like good luck with that. And that was me being transgressive. That was like, you know what? That was me being radical. Like, no, I'm not going to give them that. I'm not going to give that. I'm going to give something else. And I found it to be interesting. Painting practice and the history of painting and is a whole nother thing I wasn't planning on, the market and my goodness and all that stuff. But you navigate it as you move through it. I start off very naive, but I learn as I go. And I was telling maybe someone earlier, The only difference is that I have to make all my mistakes in public now because I'm a figure that people know. But I still make them, like, oops, I'm not sure. I'd like to show slides of things I'm working on. I like to show things that, seamlessness is a problem for me. I'm always suspicious of it. So it's like the non-studio people are suspicious of me and the studio people are suspicious of me. I'm always suspicious. I'm comfortable with the black people and I'm comfortable with the white people. So sometimes the black people are suspicious because I know white people, and sometimes it's comfortable because I know white people and with the white people. So everybody's suspicious. It's okay. It's like you navigate these sites without becoming the sites. And yeah, it's just a sign. For me, it works. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really curious about the piece you did at Basel,
Oh, sure.
the container, and I'm curious about how the dialogues in the salon changed in that environment.
I didn't really think that one through too well. But I just do things because I want to do things. I don't do things political or true. I thought, oh, that'd be interesting. I thought Miami Basel, right? Oh, how interesting. It's Miami, it's facing Cuba. One, this is going to be great. The first year, shipping containers about the embargoes, and people are going to be installations and all this kind of great stuff. And I'm getting in on this. They gave my gallery one, and I bartered with my gallery, which at the time was Lombard free. You give me half the container, and I'll give you 2 works. You don't give me 2 works, and you don't give me half the container, I won't do a work. I'm always like this. So I thought everybody was going to do that. So I went back to the hair salon, and I told everybody in the hair salon, you guys are getting a free trip to Miami. That's how you have to kind of, sell it. Totally all paid for. And Mom was like, really? Yeah, totally all paid for. Okay. So, the contents, the trucks came, put all the contents in there, shipped it to Miami. It unloads in front of Miami Basel, and everybody was bringing in art to the shipping containers. And I was like, oh shit. And so I was like, uh-oh. And so I just thought, well, I'm really into this idea. I'm going to try it. So we put the hair salon together, and, I just didn't think it through. Because it was all up. My mom flew down. My mom was really cute. She's really cute. She's like, well, where are we going to put the tip jar? That's all she could do, the tip jar, right? I said, well, that's right, Mom, that's right. So we're, I started being a hairdresser, and we're all working. But here's the deal, though. I don't know how this, we didn't process this one little thing, Black hair is different than white hair. We do black hair. We don't do white hair. I was like, we didn't think that one through, Mom. The lady's like, I want to blow dry. I was like, a blow dry? I can hook you up with a weave, I didn't think it through at all. But that was interesting, yeah. But somehow, we worked it out. We worked it out because it was really interesting because we knew how to do braids, and some of the young kids like braids, and some of the older women whose hair was getting thin, we'd like, oh, girl, we could hook you up with some, weave and make it thicker. So, but it was really interesting. My mom was there, Cleo was there, and all these people were there. And I'll try to go back to that. And my mom was like, Mark, I know you didn't bring us all the way here for us not to make no money. So it was really this really cute thing where it's like, well, Mom, and so we really worked it out. So let me see, I'm going to get to Cleo, because she's the one who's like, yeah, this is so Cleo, with the sort of onto the left, she's like, oh no, honey, we can make some money. So she started going around to the fair and oh, we can give you some braids, we can put a little patch of gray, a bright pink, and so that's how we started getting busy. And once we started getting busy, And it turned into a real hair salon. It like really turned into a real hair salon. And the interesting thing was, at a point, I completely forgot that it was anything other than a hair salon because we were working so much. And then you would turn around and you would see people, and it was like, oh shit, this is like, and my mom like, no, Mark, don't do it that way, do it this way. I'm like, Mom, you know, I got this, you know, I know how to do this. And it was just one of those gestures. It wasn't a performance for the art world. It was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to try it. I didn't really give a it wasn't done as a spectacle. It was done as a relationship with where I was from, what I did, and it was from mercantile to mercantile because, you know, galleries, that's all there is. Merchants, they try to be in fancy. They're merchants, they're selling stuff. They're hustling you when you walk in. Tate. Claire. No, Tate and Claire are the ones that work with me at White Cube and House and Worth. That's why I can play with them. But, you know, hey girl, your hair looks good. You need a little, you know. They do the same thing. Oh, I love that new Prada suit you got on, you know. So I thought it was an interesting thing. And it went over super well. The conversations were fine. It was other for both sides. Clearly, the women sitting in the chair had not experienced Cleo or my mother. But it was a conversation, and it was really interesting. It's so funny. I must have gotten like 30 museums wanting me to stage this again. I said, I can't do that. It was one time. Like, I can't do that. And it's funny, though, because I had a show and I had to leave them there. And so I said, Mom, I got to go. I have a show. And she's like, oh, it's fine. We're making money. Yeah. So I think it's how you enter in, where you're coming from. I wouldn't do it again, but it worked. It was fine. It was fine. It was done respectful. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, she has a
yeah, hi. So
Hey.
I wanted to pick up on the thing that you said about navigating sites, navigating these different sites. And, you know, you've shown us two big strands of work, one that's more a kind of object-based painting practice, painting-ish abstraction, and then more public projects. And I'm curious if you could just talk a little about what you find really pleasurable and really challenging about those two different ways of working in terms of your own process as an artist, and then also maybe picking up a little on what you were just saying about Basel in the way that the work is received.
The more difficult work is the studio work. I'm usually by myself, but I don't have things to hang it on as much. The social work, you have to navigate more people, but because I came from so much the public sphere, I didn't go to school, I didn't even go to Cal Arts until I was 30. I was pretty much a hairdresser all the way up till that point. I mean, I lived in Europe, I was still a hairdresser. I mean, it's, you know, I lived in Amsterdam, hairdresser, Rome, you know, I was always kind of working in that public sphere. So I can collapse into the public sphere almost seamless, like I can disappear. Like so that is kind of easier in a way. It's kind of easier. The reception, let's see. Oh, people always have something to say, but usually I think I probably get nailed more for the social work. Like, people have something like, he shouldn't be, oh, Lord have mercy, all these people and these opinions. I know exactly why I do things, but sometimes people will think, well, that can't be the only reason why he's doing that. There has to be something else. No, it's not. It's just, I'm doing exactly what I'm doing, and I'm talking exactly the way I'm saying exactly what I mean. I'm not a real beat around the bush person. So I feel like sometimes they want to make the conversation more complicated than it actually really is. What comes out of that experience, like, I don't know the full ramification of what came out of the shipping container project, there's always this feeling to want to hide your business. That's what black people say. I don't know if they say, I don't know what black people say in Canada, but let me tell my business. Don't we put my business out in the streets? I used to always say, girl, you ain't got no business. But, so I don't know, but I just use things that I'm comfortable with, but that's something. So, but in being an artist, I want to engage, quote unquote, the business, right? To a certain point. So, I think some people get uncomfortable with exposing certain things, but I felt that it was appropriate, and I never do anything for the spectacle value. Now, when I'm in the social sector, I see a lot of good things that I could exploit. I said, that could really get me in, like, document it. But I don't. I don't. So I feel like sometimes my meaning and what other people perceive it sometimes gets lost, or it becomes different. But hell, my grandmother said, what people think of me is none of my business, so I kind of feel that way too. It's just, no, I kind of feel that way, you know. And and as a political strategy, I just realized a long time ago I was going to speak in ways that people understood what I was saying. I wasn't going to try to perform intelligence. I think that in the art world, there is a certain way that you can perform being intelligent if you reference certain things or speak a certain way or present your work a certain way, that it can make you, it's very hegemonic. I sit here and you sit there and I'm more intelligent, and when there's any questions, of course there's no questions, because how could you, there can't be any questions. You're not at my level. It's like in art school. My God, you know how to communicate, you go to art school, and then you totally don't know how to communicate anymore. Because you're so afraid just to talk, because you don't want to be perceived as not being smart. This idea of perceptions of smart. Oh, you should go see that work, he's really smart. Oh, that's a smart show. Who's really smart? So you hear this idea of smartness so much, you start to think, well, hell, am I smart? I might not be so smart. So for me, I did do that, and I got out of school because I wanted a career like everybody else. And I had all those notes on top of notes, and Derrida and Foucault and this and that, and I was giving a talk and everything, and I forgot the notes. And I just thought, this is not going to work for me. I think I'm intelligent, but I think I'm going to have to speak out of my voice. And so it's a choice that I make. And people say, oh, Mark, yes, you are smart. Like, I didn't, I go, okay, So it's the price that I pay for, and I like to be vulnerable, I like to put things out there and to be vulnerable. I don't like it to be perfect. I'm still figuring this stuff out myself, and I want people to see into my process as much as the work. So in order to do that, you have to leave these gaps that aren't perfect. I guess they'll write about me and they'll make it perfect after I'm long gone, but now it's an interesting time when you can see the bumps. Girl, don't give me one of them questions.
No, it'd be really easy. But the size in your paintings,
Yeah.
It's always so mesmerizing. Do you ever make small paintings?
I'm actually making small paintings now. I initially was making very small paintings, and then I realized that I wanted to make paintings that just took longer and that I could fall into, and the longer I work, the more confident I become. I'm not a confident person when I start. I become confident as I work through something. Other people maybe are different. They just walk in and know they're the shit. I'm the shit. I think it's a very kind of male thing. I got this. I'm like, not that. I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure. Let's get going. So the more I work my way layer by layer by layer to the truth of that work. I don't know, I think we all start off, when we have conversations, we put our best foot forward, and it's mostly like, here's the script, And as you get to know each other, we peel it back, and get all those surprises, and that. So it's the same thing with the work. I'm saying it's It's disingenuine, but it's safer. And as I move through it, I can get more quote unquote. So I just need a larger space to work. I need a lot of time to work it out, and then I run out of room. It's like, oh. But a big painting takes me time, and I can kind of play in it. I can kind of, it has a relationship to the, and I'm tall. You know, I'm like damn near 7 feet. So, you know, it's a lot. It's, you know. And, but the funny thing is, when I first started making big paintings, I did not want to make a big painting. I felt like it took up too much room. I felt like it wasn't proper. It was inappropriate. One thing you learn about being super tall is to sit in the back, don't take up too much room. Everybody loves a tall person until I'm sitting in front of you at the theater. Then nobody loves a tall person, you know? So it's kind of like you learn that. You kind of learn to kind of try to, see, he's tall. And I saw a little smirk on your face, you know. We learn to slouch everything we slouch and not take up too much space. Don't take up too much space. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. I think women learn that too. Don't speak up. They're going to think you're a bitch. You know, so, and I realized I had that, and I was like, well, I'm definitely making a big painting now, just to kind of work my way through that. So I'm working my way through all my stuff while I'm making stuff. But you realize something, like, what's that hesitancy? And I still, if I go to a movie theater, like, I just walk in and sit down. Like, I'm going to sit, like, right on the side. Like, just, I'm not going to do all this. Oh. And you just, regular-sized people, like, drive me crazy. You guys just want to go in the theater. Oh, Mark, let's go down this row and see if there's a seat. And let's go down this row. I'm like, oh my God, can we just sit down? The whole theater is like, God, please don't come over here. Please don't come over here. I was like, just sit down. You know, what is the tall people stuff? Tall people stuff. We understand all this stuff, but you learn that and you internalize that, and you around gender and all kinds of things. And so, who is allowed and who isn't allowed, it's all like part of it. And I just work it out on every single, I'm just very present in my, whatever I'm going through. Whatever I'm in, right? So.
You've shown tonight,
my mother, let me get it, getting tired of her.
Yeah. You showed a lot of paintings tonight, and you showed sculptures and installations and murals and performance work I know that you've also done. Do you think of yourself as like an interdisciplinary artist, or are you not even considering those kinds of boundaries?
Artist, like artist with a little A. Yeah, I don't. I get. Well, most people think they say I'm a painter. So, oh yeah, I'm just an artist. I like to paint. I like to have a studio practice, but then I also like to engage in this public sphere. I mean, I really do. So, I don't know what labels, whatever label they want to give me, I'm okay with it. You know, I don't really fight it or think about it. If I have an idea, then it's a good video work, or that's a good painting, or that's a good book, or I'm doing a sound piece now, and I had never done something like the LAX project. Are you kidding? I just try things. It sounds interesting. Tape and clear the. Oh, Mark, are you interested in? Oh, yeah, I'll try that. I'll do that. Yes, let's try it. I'm thinking to myself, oh, how do I do it? So it's just whatever. Yeah, I'm just kind of going along and being creative.
Are you interested in film?
Am I interested in film? Yeah, sure. I would. I'd try. I would. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna tell you something. Just stay between us. I actually was in a film, and I was broke, and I was living in Egypt, above all places. You know, got broke living in Egypt, and made a little bit of money on the boat, like going down the Nile. Somebody got on the boat and didn't have any money, but then it was like a church group, like a black church group, and I was like, oh, I got this. So I was like, I'm a hairdresser. I was like, boom. So I made like enough money to like live. So when I was in Aswan at the bottom, is that Aswan or Luxor? They were shooting a movie, like one of these Egyptian like movies, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to be in it?" And I was like, "Well, what kind of movie is it?" They're like, "No, you play a god." And so I was like a god, and I came down from the pyramids with this snake around. Whatever. Yeah, so funny, right? Pay me a little bit of money. But a real movie, I think I have a few interesting stories to tell, and I would like to tell them. I just need to get around to them and how I want to do it, But sure, I'm good with that. I'm okay with that medium. I guess. I mean, it's a lot of people. There's a lot more people than in the studio. So I don't know if I can, well, we'll see.
Mark, I had a question about the relationship between Bell Tower and the arc that you made for Prospect One. Can you speak a little bit about that? They seem related.
Well, materially, well, you know, they have a lot of materially, and these iconic. I feel like the Jumbotron is an iconic symbol of sports, and the arc is just it's a sort of iconic symbol. So I like to take these kind of iconic shapes that are embedded with narrative and language and sort of stuff, and then the plywood barricades still have to do with memory. I like plywood barricades without the paper because it has to do with memory. A transaction has happened, and we are now at another place. It's gone. The train has left the station. I always like that. Sort of like I always liked, it goes to show how, you know, where I spent my time. I loved when the lights went up in clubs at 2 or 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I used to love that moment when the lights went up. I used to say, wow, these people are nowhere near as good looking. And this is an ugly, tacky place. And that's tinfoil over that. You know, I love but it would pulsate with memory. And I love that. The greasy mirrors, all that. So I love this kind of details that point to a transaction that's gone. And so the plywood barricades for me are that. The arc, same. The Jumbotron, not so much, but it's a Jumbotron made out of wood, which means that it's a transaction. It's almost like technology, Paleolithic technology, right? It's sort of like Stonehenge Jumbotron. It's ancient and contemporary at the same time. Paleolithic, did I say that right? So, yeah. Tate. I don't know why, because Tate's sitting right there, so I keep playing with him. Tate. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. And thanks. I was like, thank you.